Welcome to the I Can Do Anything podcast. My name is Colin, and today I'm going to be talking about some really great NBA games from the last couple of nights because I can do anything. So Tuesday night, there were 6 games. I didn't get a chance to record last night because we had a women's basketball game at Trine. The Trine women's basketball team defeated Albion, who was, I think, was first in the league. The Albion men's and women's teams were both first in the MIAA, and Trine men's basketball went to Albion, and the Albion women came to Trine, and the women blew Albion out. So that kind of separated. That was going to be sort of the big test for the women this year. Well, I guess the bigger test will be playing them on the road, but they passed the test at home, and it looks like Trine women's basketball will certainly be hosting the MIAA tournament and will likely win the MIAA tournament just based off of, they blew Calvin out at Calvin, they blew Hope out at Hope, and so now they have Calvin and Hope at home, and then their next, the only other test will be Albion. The rest of the teams in the MIAA kind of suck, and then the men's basketball team beat Albion on the road, which was a really big test. Albion was undefeated in the MIAA thus far. I think since they lost to Olivet at home a couple weeks ago, they'll probably lose to Olivet on the road. Olivet seems to be far more athletic and just kind of a better overall team. But that's a very, very quick MIAA wrap-up because nobody really cares about that. Moving on to NBA basketball, though, the Warriors and the Nuggets played on Tuesday night, and it was a really great game. The Warriors scored 51 points in the first quarter, setting an NBA record for the most threes in a quarter. The crazy thing about it was the Nuggets scored 38 points in a quarter, which is slightly above average. I want to guess that maybe 30 points in a quarter is somewhere around the average in an NBA game. Certainly the NBA today, there's a lot more scoring. But Denver shot 60% from the field, scored 38 points, and they were down by 13 at the end of the first quarter. It just kind of speaks to how good the Warriors are. It's really, really not fair. Take a look at the box score from this game. Draymond Green played really well and has played much better in the last 4 or 5 games. He only had 4 points, but 13 assists, only 1 turnover. There's a lot of instances where Draymond Green is almost the point guard. I noticed in last night's game against the Pelicans, there was a lot of possessions early on where Draymond Green was literally the point guard. Steph Curry would inbound the ball to Draymond Green, and Draymond would bring the ball up the floor. Or there was even an instance where I don't think it was Steph, because if Steph got the rebound, I'm sure he would bring the ball up. But somebody got the rebound, outletted it to Draymond, and he dribbled the ball down the floor. He pointed for Clay to make a back cut, threw Clay a really great backdoor bounce pass, and Clay caught it and finished it, and I believe he got fouled. And I don't know, Draymond has played really well. The last 2 games he played really great, but in the last 5 or so games he's played really well, just sort of in comparison, I guess, to what he hasn't had a great season, certainly in comparison to the last 3 or 4 seasons. But the Warriors-Nuggets game was a really fun one to watch. It ended up being a blowout, and you kind of got I don't know. Okay, full honesty here. I only watched the first half because I think I kind of got the point. The final score ended up being 142 to 111, and you just kind of saw that the Warriors were gonna win because you can't really, you can't recover from a record-setting first quarter where, Denver played really well too, and it just wasn't good enough because the Warriors are a fucking cheat code. But Klay Thompson finished with 31, Curry finished with 31, Durant 27. Durant shot 71% from 3. 5 of 7. Clay, 5 of 8, 62%. And Steph Curry, 8 of 13, 61%. Durant shot 11 of 15, 73.3% from the field. He made his first 8 shots before finally missing a 3, his 9th shot. Clay shot 13 of 19, 68% from the field, and Curry 10 of 18, 55% from the field. When those 3 guys are playing like that and playing that well, it's just like Denver was first at the time, and then because of the win, the Warriors took over first place in the West. But, so it's not like they blew out a slouch team. Like, Denver is really, really good this year. Let me look at their box score. Denver, it should be noted that Denver is missing one of their better players. Gary Harris didn't play in that game, but Jamal Murray has played really well this season so far. I talked about him last episode as part of my excitement for this game, and he finished with 21. Mikal Beasley finished with 22. Jokic had 17, only 4 rebounds, but 8 assists, which is right around his average. Paul Millsap had a pretty below average game, 10 points on 62% shooting is great. 3 rebounds, though, is probably well below his average. So let's move forward to there was a moment in that game that sort of annoyed me with the refereeing. Draymond Green was guarding Nikola Jokic, and they called a foul on him, and it was pretty clearly not a foul. And then Draymond was yapping to the ref and gave him a technical, and the ref gave him a technical. And then they came back down the next trip on when Denver had the ball, and Draymond pretty clearly fouled him on that trip, and then they didn't call a foul, and Jokic made the layup anyways. But I don't know, it just sort of bothered me. Like, as a ref, you kind of know when you got a call wrong, and at that point, like, if that were me and I got that call wrong, I'd just let Draymond say what he had to say, as long as it didn't go like completely overboard and he didn't tell me to suck a dick or tell my mom to suck it, like something that's just completely overboard, or things didn't get physical or whatever, then I just let him say what he's got to say, because you clearly missed the call. But then to come down on the next play, I guess the makeup there was to not call the next foul, but I don't know. I'd just rather see them get the calls right, which is something the NBA talks about pretty frequently, and that they want all the calls to be right. So I guess while I'm talking about the Warriors, I'll move on to last night's game. I'm going to kind of jump around on the days here. Actually, I probably won't talk about any of the other games on Tuesday. But let's see. So the Warriors played the Pelicans last night. The final score was 147-140. The Pelicans really led the game, like the entire game, up until about the 5-minute mark of the fourth quarter. This is what the NBA is now. Combined, the teams set a record for most threes made in an NBA game. I don't remember what it was. I want to say it was like in the 40s or something like that. Maybe the recap for the game will have that in it. Let's see. Curry scored 41 points with 9 3-pointers to become the first player in NBA history to make 8 or more threes in 3 straight games. Come on, tell me how many threes were made. I'm going to search the word record. The Pelicans and Warriors combined for an NBA record 43 threes, breaking the mark by 2 that the Sacramento and Golden State game accomplished on January 5th. So they broke their own record, the Warriors did. But this is what the NBA is now. And I mean, it was a fucking great game. Watching Curry rain threes. Durant played really well. Draymond Green again played really well. Draymond had 17 points on 66% shooting. He was 4 of 7 from 3, 2 threes down the stretch that were really, really big threes to kind of ice the game. He had 6 rebounds, 14 assists, 1 turnover, and really was the facilitator. And in a lot of cases, he was the point guard. The next closest in assists was Durant with 4 and Andre Iguodala with 4. Iguodala played really well, too. He had 13 points off the bench in 23 minutes, shot 5 of 10 from the field. Durant had 30. Klay Thompson had 19. I said that already. Steph Curry had 41, 11 of 22, 50% from the field, 9 of 17, 52.9% from three for Curry. But this is what the league wants. I mean, it was a very highly entertaining game. It wasn't like the defense was bad either. They just took so many threes and made so many threes that it's a high-scoring, high-paced game. Anthony Davis played really well. There was a bunch of really great finishes at the rim, some highlight material dunks. Draymond Green threw a couple alley-oops to Alfonso McKinney that were fun to watch. They were really wide open, but they were still fun to watch. A lot of what defenses they really don't have a choice but to do this, but they'll like Draymond will set the pick and roll high for Steph Curry, and then they'll double Curry off the pick and roll, and he'll just drop it off to Draymond, and then Draymond has like 3-on-1 in most cases, or 3-on-2, where Looney or whoever is in as the 5 will be more than likely stretched out or on the block, and then they'll have 2 guys in the corners. So in a lot of cases, the defense will be hugging Klay and Durant in the corners, or on the corner in the wing, or wherever they happen to be for that particular play. And then Draymond just basically has a decision. It's 3-on-1 in most cases. Him, the 2 guys in the corner, and then whoever's left on defense under the basket. And he does a really great job of facilitating and just making a decision, basically, like taking the ball to the basket if they're not going to come up off of the corners and off of the shooters, or he'll just he had a lot of really great passes and decisions made last night. It's really great. A lot of people hate Draymond Green. I really like him because he's a Michigan State alum. And I just like to see him playing well and being successful. It was fun to watch him hit those 2 big threes down the stretch. They were wide open threes, but he stood in there and made them. And then both of them were in the corner. The last one that he made was right in front of the Pelicans bench, and I'm sure they were talking shit to him while he shot it. And then he turned around and talked some shit back after he made it. So that was fun to watch. Let's move on to some of the other games from last night. The Trailblazers, who I didn't really realize this, the Trailblazers have been quietly playing really, really well over the last like 3 or 4 weeks. They beat the Cavs, who suck, obviously, 129-112. I'm going to pull up the standings real quick. The Portland Trailblazers are 4th in the West. They're 4.5 games back from first place, 3.5 back from second place Denver, but they're only a half game back from third place. So they could very easily be, by the end of tonight even, if Oklahoma City and them both play, they could very easily be third in the West. Damian Lillard's having a really good year. The MVP matrix is coming up at the end of this episode. Damian Lillard didn't really... Let's see where he finished. Damian Lillard finished 11th, but there were 3 ties, and one of them was a 3-way tie for positions in the MVP matrix standings. But Lillard's having a really great year. I really like Damian Lillard. I want to pull up now the box score from that game. You know what? Fuck that. I don't care. They beat the Cleveland Cavaliers. There's really not a ton to talk about there. I'm going to move on to, I think, what is the storyline that a lot of people are and will be talking about. I saw one video clip title that was Stephen A. talking about Kyrie and the hypothesis. Some people, Stephen A. certainly has. He has connections throughout the NBA, so maybe he's hearing something that I obviously am not, because I have 0 connections throughout the NBA. But his theory from all of this phone call between Kyrie and LeBron James. So I guess last night after I'll talk about that first. The Raptors and the Celtics last night was a really great game. I caught the last quarter when I got home from the Trine women's basketball game. So Kyrie finished with 27 points. Let's see. Boston. Kyrie finished with 27 on 57.9% shooting, 11 of 19 from the field, 3 of 6, 50% from 3, with a deep 3 late to seal it, and a step back before that 3 when he had a switch. I believe Serge Ibaka switched onto him, and he did a series of dribble moves. Kyrie is just a lot of fun to watch. And after reading about the phone call that he made to LeBron after the game, I like him more again. I really loved Kyrie when he was playing with LeBron. The decision to leave LeBron, I think, like a lot of people, really stumped me, and I lost a lot of respect for his maturity a little bit, because I think that anybody who knows the game of basketball knows, especially in the NBA, you're not going to win a championship by yourself, especially as a small guard. Allen Iverson almost did it, and certainly Kyrie Irving is of that same mold that Allen Iverson was. And he's just a really, really gifted scorer. Can create anything really for himself, for other players. Isn't quite well. Allen Iverson wasn't the greatest assist man or playmaker for others. He certainly made more plays for himself than he did for others. But the Celtics-Raptors fourth quarter was a really fun one to watch. So Kyrie led the team in scoring. Al Horford had a good game with 24 points on 75% shooting, 9 of 12 from the field. That's mainly because he takes a lot of very close, high percentage shots. Jason Tatum finished with 16. On the other side of the ball, Kawhi Leonard had 33 on 52.6% shooting, 2 of 8 from 3, 2 assists, 4 rebounds, 4 steals for Kawhi. Serge Ibaka had 22. Pascal Siakam had 6. Kind of a underwhelming performance for Siakam, who is, they talked about it in the game last night, but I think he's the front runner for most improved. Kyle Lowry had 10 points on 30% shooting. Pretty underwhelming performance from him, and certainly got outplayed by Kyrie. 1 of 5 from 3, 6 rebounds, 7 assists is good, but a little below his average. 1 turnover. So I want to pull up the story that I read about Kyrie's phone call to LeBron James. So according to Joe Varden of The Athletic, LeBron James and Kevin Love were... No. I don't want to play a video. LeBron James and Kevin Love were at a restaurant in L.A. with some of James's business partners following the game between the Cavs and the Lakers. And... Wait, the Cavs and the Lakers just played? I don't know exactly when this phone call took place. I want to say it was last night, but I feel like he just divulged that he made the phone call last night. You know what? Let me just keep reading the article, and it'll probably tell me, even though I've read this article already. So Kevin Love described the scene saying, LeBron looked down at his phone and showed us who was calling, and he was like, I wonder what he wants. So then LeBron called him back later, and Kyrie basically said that after last night's huge win over the Raptors. Oh, so yeah, Kyrie Irving just told ESPN reporters last night after the win about the phone call. The Lakers and the Cavs played on Sunday, I believe. Yeah, they did. The Lakers and the Cavs played Sunday. So this is the report from ESPN. Obviously, this was a big deal for me because I had to call LeBron and tell him I apologized for being that young player that wanted everything at his fingertips, and I wanted everything at my threshold. I wanted to be the guy that led us to a championship. I wanted to be the leader. I wanted to be all that. And the responsibility of being the best in the world and leading your team is something that is not meant for many people. LeBron was one of those guys who came to Cleveland and tried to show us how to win a championship, and it was hard for him, and sometimes getting the most out of the group is not the easiest thing in the world. So that made me, just the fact that he's now realizing, like, oh, this whole, I mean, in my eyes, you should have known that kind of going into it, just based off of, like I've said before, like, just based off the history of the NBA, you kind of got to know that, like, leading people is pretty difficult and winning by yourself is pretty fucking difficult. And it's never really happened. There's never been a team in NBA history that won the finals just with one star player. So just he should have probably known that, but for a lot of people, it takes experience to learn stuff. You can't necessarily learn things like by hearing somebody tell you it. You have to go through it yourself. So the fact that Kyrie is now playing with a bunch of young guys, and he's been vocal over the past 2 or 3 weeks as the Celtics have struggled a little bit. He's been pretty vocal about struggling with some of the young guys and trying to get them to come along and play at his level. I don't know if he's speaking specifically about anybody, but my guess is that it would be Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, because they're the two stars that need to play at a high level for them to be successful. And I think they're fifth in the East at this point, and could certainly, we're certainly favorites in the East coming into the season. But it's good that he's now realizing it. And so Stephen A's hypothesis on this whole thing was that this means that Kyrie is now going to go to LA to play with LeBron again. Now, I don't see that happening. I would love it. That'd be cool as hell. That would be so awesome. But, maybe this helps to repair the relationship. I know that there was some bad blood there, just based off of the way that it happened. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see it happening though, but I would certainly be, as a LeBron James fan, I would certainly be very open to that, because obviously Kyrie was a really big part of that championship in Cleveland and made that game-winning shot to beat the Warriors in, 2016? So I think that's going to be a really big story here over the next couple weeks as people continue to talk about it, and as more and more information comes out, and I'm sure we'll hear something from LeBron within the week, because the next time he has any media availability, I'm sure somebody's going to ask him about it, and he'll more than likely give a stock, pretty normal. He'll more than likely just kind of downplay the whole thing, but it's certainly an exciting storyline. These are the kind of storylines that people in the media fucking salivate over. So let's move on to All-Star voting. So more All-Star voting things came out this today, I believe. More All-Star voting things. That's really great descriptive wording, Colin. Let's see. All-Star voting update. So LeBron and Antetokounmpo led their respective conferences, and then Luka Doncic came in. Luka Doncic led third voting results, but Derrick Rose got more All-Star votes than, let's see, Steph Curry and Derrick Rose out of the West, Antetokounmpo, Leonard, Embiid. It's crazy that Derrick Rose is so high up in All-Star voting. I believe his voting numbers for this session were higher than James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, Nikola Jokic, Kemba Walker, Ben Simmons. It's really awesome for Derrick Rose and for I guess I consider myself a former Bull. The NBA is really just a players' league, and you like teams because of the players that are on the team. So I was a Bulls fan when Derrick Rose was there, and since his deterioration, and the Bulls now suck. So I'm more of a LeBron James fan than I am a fan of any team. But it's exciting to see him. And then Dwayne Wade, is high up in All-Star voting, whereas he's really not doing much this season. He's certainly not Dwayne Wade of old, but because he's going to retire at the end of this season, I think it's just kind of like a courtesy thing. D Wade fans are just going to vote out of the wazoo so that he starts in he'll probably start because he'll receive a lot of fan votes, and then he probably won't play all that much in the actual game as far as minutes go. But it is kind of a cool nod to him as just one of the NBA greats, one of the great scorers, one of the great, well, I was going to say one of the great winners of all time, but he only won one he won one championship sort of by himself. That may be the exception to what I was talking about earlier. He had Shaq, but towards the end of Shaq's career, Shaq was still really, really good and still pretty dominant in that NBA Finals. But that was Dwayne Wade's NBA Finals, and he may be the exception to that rule. Like D. Wade kind of won himself a championship. They had role players and they had good guys around him. But Dwayne Wade was the star. Shaq was the co-star, but certainly not Shaq when he was in L.A. So D-Wade now has 3 NBA Finals. So he is a great winner and one of the great winners in NBA history, but not one of the, he's probably not in the top 10 in great winners in NBA history. I think there's a lot of guys, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, LeBron, Michael Jordan, Kobe, Shaq. There's a lot of guys from the 80s, and the Magic Johnson is a great winner. Any of those guys on those Showtime Lakers teams. But Dwayne Wade will be cool to see in the All-Star game. I personally didn't vote for him and wouldn't vote for him. I tend to vote for All-Star players, or I do my All-Star voting based on who's playing the best in the season. There's a lot of favorite voting, guys will just vote for their favorite player even if they kind of suck, or even if they're clearly not objectively an All-Star. So what else do I need to talk about on this episode before I get to the MVP matrix? I think leading into the MVP matrix, I'll talk about James Harden's little run he's on here. So he scored 58 points last night, but the 58 points came in a loss. And I was noticing something as I was putting together topics, and I'm damn near 30 minutes into this thing, and I haven't talked about a 58-point performance that happened last night. And I was thinking to myself, has there ever been 50-plus point game performances that basketball fans, I don't care to watch that game? He scored 58 points, 10 rebounds in a 145-142 loss to the Brooklyn Nets of all teams. And I don't care to watch it. Never before has a player scored 50 points and basketball fans are just I could live without watching that game. In most situations you'd be like, fuck, he scored 58 points, I got to see that. But he scored 58 points on 47% shooting, which is good, 16 of 34 from the field, 5 of 19 from 3, 26.3% from 3, which is pretty terrible, and that's so many fucking threes. 21 of 23 points, or 21 of his 58 points were from the free throw line. He was 21 of 23 from the free throw line. It's just not a very fun way to watch I don't know. He takes so many shots. He made 5 threes and took 19 of them. That's still so many misses. He missed more shots than he made, and he just shot a bunch of free throws. I don't know. It's not all that fun to watch. So that kind of transitions to the MVP matrix. I think a lot of people probably, after this historic run, have James Harden at 1 or 2 in their MVP in the MVP race so far this year. So the MVP matrix that I put together on a weekly basis on Thursdays is a kind of running total of the best performers on teams that are 50% or 500 in the win column. 500, holy shit. Teams that are 500% with star players. The star player is put into the MVP matrix. So this week I added Jimmy Butler and LaMarcus Aldridge, and let's see here. Blake Griffin didn't qualify for it because his team is below 500. Anthony Davis, who would have likely been in the top 6, didn't qualify for it because the Pelicans are below 500. And then Kemba Walker and Mike Conley Jr. Also didn't qualify because their teams are below 500. So there's, let's see, there's 9, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 categories by which each player is judged. Points per game, assists per game, steals per game, blocks per game, rebounds per game, plus minus, 3-point percentage, field goal percentage, and win percentage. So, let's see. In first in points per game was James Harden, and first for assists per game was Russell Westbrook. Steals per game, Russell Westbrook. Blocks per game, Joel Embiid. Rebounds per game, Joel Embiid. Plus minus was Steph Curry. 3-point percentage, Steph Curry. Field goal percentage, Ben Simmons, and win percentage, Giannis Antetokounmpo. So the final standings for this week were. Well, I guess I should explain. I feel the need to explain the MVP matrix each week, just in case there's some new listeners. So out of all those statistical categories, each player, based on how high they finish amongst all the other players. So there were 19 players this week that were included in the matrix. So Harden, who was first in points per game, received 1 point for that category. And Kyle Lowry, who finished 19th in points per game, received 19 points. And then each player's points are added up throughout the categories, and it's like golf. The player with the lowest points leads the standings. So Antetokounmpo finished first again with 52 points total. Kevin Durant finished second with 61 points. Steph Curry and Kawhi Leonard finished tied for third with 73 points. Nikola Jokic finished fourth with 75 points, and then Paul George and LeBron James tied for fifth with 80 points, and then James Harden finished sixth with 81. So early on, I had the wow factor as another statistical category, sort of, and I found that to be kind of hard to quantify and kind of hard to keep track of each week. And I think that for a lot of people, like what James Harden is doing plays a really big role in him being so high up in the MVP race. But even if you were, so I'll bump him up to fifth. So instead of Paul George and LeBron hasn't played since Christmas, so instead of them being tied for fifth, I'll move them down to sixth, and we'll put Harden at fifth. So he's still only at fifth. I think Antetokounmpo has just been all around better at basketball for a much longer period. Like what Harden's done over the past month or two is certainly much more fascinating than what Antetokounmpo has done over the entire season. But Antetokounmpo has been consistent and consistently amazing. His team is first in the league. Harden's team just lost last night in a 58-point performance to the fucking Nets. The Nets are, let me see the standings here. The Nets are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th in the East, and the Rockets are 5th in the West. I don't know. Antetokounmpo is more impressive to me. Consistency means a lot more to me than this. I saw a headline earlier today that it posed a question like, can Harden sustain this over the long run and lead the Rockets to whatever they lead? He's not going to beat the Warriors in the West by himself. He's not going to be able to sustain this this is going to end. Like, he's not going to do this the entire year, and it's just not going to last. He's going to dry up, and I see another, it's a lot of highs and it's high highs and low lows. He played like shit at the beginning of the year. He's playing out of his mind. This is probably the greatest scoring run in NBA history. I don't think there's any doubt about it, really. Like, this is fascinating. But it'll come to an end, and he'll probably have another month-long stretch where he doesn't play very well. I don't know. It's certainly impressive, but it doesn't mean to me that he's atop the MVP list. I mean, if I look at each of the categories, for example, let's pull up field goal percentage. He finished 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15th in field goal percentage. Antetokounmpo finished second because he takes a much higher percentage shot. Now, Antetokounmpo doesn't really shoot threes, so he finished really, really low in three-point percentage. But Harden finished right around the middle of the pack, slightly above average in three-point percentage. He was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th in three-point percentage. But Antetokounmpo, his team's in first in the league, so he got 1 point for win percentage. He finished second in field goal percentage. He finished second in plus minus, second in rebounds, second in blocks, middle of the pack in steals, and Harden was tied for third in steals. Harden's defense has certainly improved, and I want to give him credit for that. His defense is much better, but in a close game, James Harden's not guarding the other team's best player down the stretch when it matters at the end of the season. Antetokounmpo will be guarding Kevin Durant, LeBron James, the great players. He'll be guarding Kawhi Leonard. He'll be guarding Paul George. Houston's not putting James Harden on all those guys down the stretch at the end of the season. They're going to put PJ Tucker or literally anybody else on those guys come crunch time, and defense is a pretty fucking important part of the game, and I just don't think he is as valuable to the Rockets as Antetokounmpo is to the Bucks. In assists per game, Harden's third. He finished third in those categories, and then obviously finished first in points per game. But Antetokounmpo finished 8th in points per game. Finished right in the middle at tied for 10th in assists per game. I just think he's a much more well-rounded NBA player. So to wrap it up, the top 6 in the MVP matrix for this week: Antetokounmpo finished with 52 points, well above the pack. Durant finished second with 61 points. Curry and Leonard tie for third with 73 points. Nikola Jokic finished fourth with 75 points. Paul George and LeBron tie for fifth with 80 points, and James Harden sixth with 81. And I'll make the adjustment and move him up above LeBron and George. But I just don't think that James Harden, he'll probably win MVP this year. If this even remotely close, if he plays anything close to what he's doing right now, he'll win MVP. If he does it for the rest of the year, because MVP is a hype award, and there's really no logistics that are involved. But since you're listening to the I Can Do Anything podcast, I'm bringing the logistics to the MVP award, and it won't matter. But Antetokounmpo has finished first or second every week in the MVP matrix that I've done it, and there's got to by the end of the year, I'm gonna take all of the standings and do the from all the standings from each week and do the same thing. If you finished first, you get 1 point. If you finish second, you get 2 points, and add up all the week overall standings and make a season overall standing. And whoever has the lowest will win. And my guess is that it'll be Antetokounmpo by a long shot. So thanks for listening to the I Can Do Anything podcast. Tune in tomorrow. Have a good night.